Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. And I know it's April the 1st, but let me assure you, there are no jokes in this episode. The subject matter that we are covering is way too important to waste time on some fooling around here. Besides, I've got some quite interesting news for you today. On the military front, well, Ukraine is retaking a bunch of cities, and Russians are retreating, so they're moving to focus on Donbas. However, conflict intelligence team has also reported that there are huge amounts of Russian missiles Tochka that are being, sent in to the front lines to be used at the war by Russia through Belarus, which is a worrying development. Another thing is that Russia claims that Ukraine's helicopters blew up a oil refinery thing in Belgrade, the Russian Belgrade, not the Serbian one, and there are massive fires, although I've heard reports that it's basically, Russians themselves being incompetent. However, the conflict intelligence team again reports that indeed, yes, there were helicopters and they shot missiles, and, well, either it's some error on the Russian part, or, well, some sneaky Russian helicopter pilots who just flew just up there from Kharkov. Hey, well, still, those are the news. However, I wanted to pay attention to two documents that I have found, and they both are quite interesting, but they're also quite long, so I don't know if I'll get them both in this one episode, but definitely we need to take a look at this. First of all, there's an article, an interesting one. See, Russia really hoped to end the occupation of Ukraine in like 1 or 2 days and show the international community how, quote, a new world is being born, end quote, thanks to Vladimir Putin's heroic mission. See, the thing is, in RIA Novosti, a site that's now banned in Latvia, but, that was one of their main things, there was this prepared article, Offensive of Russia and the New World, which was scheduled for release at 8 a.m. on February 26th in RIA Novosti. The next day, the article was to be published in The Guardian. The Russian media did not expect that Kiev would not be taken, and they forgot to remove the article from the timer. However, it still exists in the Wayback Machine, and you can find it. It's there. In Russian, it's called Наступление России и Нового мира by Pyotr Akopov, and it has like 33 captures. It's easily there. This article went online and was taken away really quickly, but again, internet remembers. And this is kind of crazy. Apparently, by resolving the Ukrainian question, as they call it, Russia wanted to show the world its response to Vladimir Putin's claims about a unipolar world, as he said 15 years ago in his Munich speech. By occupying Ukraine, the Kremlin believes Russia is creating a proper multipolar world. The article, which is completely full with Kremlin's obsessive historical lies, which President Putin likes to saturate with his speeches, all this stuff. This explains key ideologies of this new world. So, let me bring you this article, which is thankfully translated to English by thepage.ua. So I'll trust their translation since it's quite long. But basically, here you go. An article that was written by Pyotr Akopov, even before the invasion began, probably, that aired on the 26th of February, 8 a.m., and then was quickly taken down. A new world is being born. Russia's military operation in Ukraine has ushered a new era in 3 dimensions at the same time, and of course in a 4th, internal Russian dimension. Here begins a new chapter both in our ideology and in the very model of our socio-economic system, but this is worth coming back to separately a little later. Russia is restoring its unity. The tragedy of 1991, the terrible catastrophe in our history, its unnatural dislocation have all been overcome. Yes, at a great cost, indeed, through the tragic events of what is practically a civil war, because now brothers divided between the Russian and Ukrainian armies are still shooting at each other. But there will be no more Ukraine as an anti-Russia. Russia is restoring its historical fullness, uniting the Russian world and the Russian people together in its entirety of Great Russians, Belarusians, and Little Russians. If we had abandoned this, if we would have allowed this temporary division to take hold for centuries, then we would not only have betrayed the memory of our ancestors, but would have also been cursed by our descendants for allowing the disintegration of Russian lands. Vladimir Putin, with no exaggeration, has taken upon himself a historic responsibility by deciding not to leave the solution of the Ukrainian question to future generations. After all, the need to solve it would have always remained Russia's main problem for two key reasons. And the issue of national security, that is the creation of an anti-Russia from Ukraine and an outpost for the West to put pressure on us, is only the second most important among them. The first would always be our suffering from the complex of a divided nation, the complex of national humiliation, when the Russian house first lost part of its foundation, Kiev, and then was forced to come to terms with the existence of two states, not one, but two nations. That is, either to abandon their history, agreeing with the insane versions that only Ukraine is the real Rus, or to gnash one's teeth helplessly, remembering the times when we lost Ukraine. Returning Ukraine, that is, turning it back to Russia, would have become more and more difficult with every decade. As recording the de-Russification of Russians and inciting of Ukrainian Little Russians against Russians would have gained momentum, and in the event of the consolidation of the full geopolitical and military control of the West over Ukraine, its return to Russia would have become completely impossible. Russia would have to fight for it with the whole North Atlantic bloc. Now this problem is gone. Ukraine has returned to Russia. This does not mean that its statehood will be liquidated, but it will be reorganized, re-established, and returned to its natural state of part of the Russian world. Within what boundaries and in what form will the alliance with Russia be consolidated? Through the CSTO and the Eurasian Union, or the Union State of Russia and Belarus? This will be decided after the end is put in the history of Ukraine as anti-Russia. In any case, the period of split of the Russian people is coming to an end. And here begins the second dimension of the upcoming new era, as it concerns Russia's relations with the West. Not even just with Russia, but the Russian world, that is, three states, Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, acting in geopolitical terms as a single whole. These relations have entered a new stage. The West will see the return of Russia to its historical borders in Europe, and the West is loudly indignant at this, although deep down it must admit to itself that it could not be otherwise. Was it really a thing in European capitals in Paris and Berlin to seriously think that Moscow would abandon Kiev, that the Russians would be an eternally divided people? Did it happen at the same time that Europe came into existence, when the German and French elites seized control of European integration from the Anglo-Saxons and assembled a unified Europe? Forgetting that the unification of Europe became possible only thanks to the unification of Germany, which took place according to the good Russian, albeit not very smart, will. To swipe away Russian lands after that is the height of not just ingratitude, but geopolitical stupidity. The West as a whole, and even more so, Europe in the election, did not have the strength to keep its sphere of influence, much less to take Ukraine for itself. One would have to be a geopolitical fool not to have understood this. More precisely, there was only one option for them, to make a bet for a limited collapse of Russia, that is of the Russian Federation. But the fact that it did not work should have been clear 20 years ago. Russia is back. Now, the West is trying to punish Russia for the fact that it has returned, for not justifying the West's plans to live at Russia's expense, for not allowing the expansion of the Western space to the East. It is eager to tell us that relationships are important, but this has not been the case for a long time. The world has changed, and this is confirmed not only by Europeans, but also by the Anglo-Saxons who rule the West. No amount of Western pressure on Russia will lead to anything. There will be losses from sublimation, confrontation on both sides, but Russia is ready for them morally and geopolitically. But for the West itself, an increase in the degree of confrontation incurs huge costs, and the main ones are not at all economic. Europe, as part of the West, wanted autonomy. The German project of European integration does not matter while the Anglo-Saxon ideological, military, and geopolitical control over the old world is maintained. Yes, and it cannot be successful because the Anglo-Saxons need a controlled Europe. But there are autonomies that are necessary in Europe for other reasons as well, such as when natural responses shift to self-isolation as a result of increasing indicators and contradictions, or focus on the Pacific region, where the geopolitical center of gravity is shifting. But the confrontation with Russia, into which the Anglo-Saxons are dragging Europe, deprives the Europeans of even the chance of independence. Not to mention the fact that they are trying to force on Europe a break with China in the same way. If now the Atlanticists are happy that the Russian threat will unite the Western Bloc, then in Berlin and Paris they cannot fail to understand that, having lost hope for autonomy, the European project will simply collapse in the medium term. That is why independent-minded Europeans are now completely uninterested in building a new Iron Curtain on their eastern borders, realizing that it will turn into a corral for Europe, whose century, more precisely half a millennium of global leadership, is over in any case, but various options for its future are still possible. Because the construction of a new world order, and this is the third dimension of current events, is accelerating, and its contours are becoming more and more clearly visible through the spreading over of Anglo-Saxon globalization. A multipolar world has finally become a reality. The operation in Russia is not capable of rallying anyone but the West against Russia, because the rest of the world sees and understands perfectly well. This is a conflict between Russia and the West. This is a response to the geopolitical expansion of the Atlanticists. This is Russia's return of its historical space and its place in the world. In China and India, Latin America and Africa, the Islamic world, and Southeast Asia, no one believes that the West leads the world order, much less sets the rules of the game. Russia has not only challenged the West, it has shown that the era of Western global domination can be considered completely and finally over. The new world will be built by all civilizations and centers of power naturally, together with the West, united or not, but not on its terms and not according to its rules. I will post in Twitter and in Facebook in the comments to this and also on this page the full text in Russian if you want to check it out, for those of you who speak Russian, just so you can check it. I'll also publish the link with the translation in English, just so that you can check this too. But I sincerely hope, that this answers kind of the main question that we've had for a long while. What exactly is it that Putin wanted? Well, this is it. You have literally heard from the Kremlin's mouthpiece, the Rupert itself, exactly what they would have posted in case they had won. Exactly what they would want to do to assert their sphere of dominance, and this clearly shows that, for example, the Baltics would be next, or Georgia. However, this does not happen. This did not happen, and we have to thank the Ukrainian soldiers for this. Again, if anyone believes that this is some denazification, there are no words about Nazis in this text. This is all about the destruction of Ukraine as a people. And it has gone, so terribly wrong for Russia. But yeah, I'll leave the second article for tomorrow, I suppose, because I really need to read through that and fact-check everything, since that one's big, because that concerns Putin's health. Don't want to talk about that in a single issue. However, one other thing that should be mentioned, and again, this is not a 1st of April joke, but as I was recording this, Russian Communist Party offered a list of, as they're the sanctioned opposition, they offered a list of immediate things that Russia should do to fix its position in the geopolitical situation. And some of it is amazing. First of all, they want to nationalize all economy and the banks, and they want to restore the planned economy. They want to forbid and make illegal any commercial activities. They want to take an utter control over export and import, and use only ruble in payments and with Western countries, accept only ruble and pay only in rubles. They also want to leave the World Trade Organization, which, and I quote here, has weakened Russia under the face of the barbaric sanctions and their policies of the West. Oh, and the final part, the only one that makes sense in all this matter, is they want to pay more attention in the development of the far east of Russia. So there you go. Well, now you've heard what they wanted to build, and now you know what they actually might have to. До свидания, товарищи. Please support the show on our Patreon, or just click the donate button on theeasternborder.lv. Donate to Ukrainians, because now here I have given you basically official sources for what they're fighting against. Okay, and finally, well, flying off to the port soon. До свидания, товарищ. And remember, happiness is mandatory.